Assalamu alaikum. This is my report for international journalism and the difference between the present state of international journalism and peace journalism and how peace journalism could be the way forward. In order to understand this question, we have to first understand the current state of international journalism. And the current state of international journalism is quite obsolete. It's almost a dying field. There's almost the number of international correspondents are dwindling and almost non-existent. The, the technological advancement that were caused by globalization has given way to to social or citizen journalism, uh, in place for the international journalism. The problem with the current state of international journalism is deeply rooted in its colonial legacy. Because international journalism was born in the time of war, it never really grew out of that perspective. Over the period of time, it learned to exercise their power and their control more subtly, but their perspective remains the same. They view themselves as the superior race and they treat the developing countries as the inferior ones. This is this is quite apparent in their content and this is quite apparent in their policies. Now, the problem with that is that it creates a unilateral or unidirectional flow of information where only the news stories of the West are given high priority, and only their agendas are given the voice. The rest of them are the rest of the world is ignored. This gives and because of which the quality of the news and the quality of the journalism declines, because agendas are the first things that are they're careful about, because those agendas are used to exercise soft power. We are moving from international correspondent to global journalism now. Global journalism is more democratic, it's more individual, and the reason for that is because the technological advancements that globalization brought, it enabled information to be so rapidly available and so rapidly distributable that the need for international correspondence as newsmaker was no longer true. In an information society, which is the current state of the current state of times, information is a commodity, and information represents power. And this is quite evident when we see the treatment of international correspondents or fixers in this profession. They are there are many cases of them being murdered for the sake of a story. That is because international journalism for the longest time was highlighted by power and nationalistic agendas. So if a story has geopolitical consequences, they go to extreme lengths to either modify that, or if the story goes out as it is, they do their best to demonize that person, and they establish very well coordinated smear campaigns on them. Global journalism, on the other hand, is its purpose is not power. Rather, it stems from a very individualistic need of the journalist to get the chance to report the whole truth without having to modify it on the basis for the sake of their newsroom or their news agency. Global journalism does not even care about soft power. Rather, rather the global journalism or peace journalism, which is a form of this new journalism that's on the new media, it is highlighted by advocacy, where they advocate for various causes, and through these causes, whether these are environment or whether these are minority rights, these are these are causes that are not the motive behind them is purely to help those causes. There's no ulterior political motives behind that. Panama Papers are one of the best examples of global journalism. The Panama paper was almost a phenomenon in which about 250 journalists from all around the world worked together for the first time to release a story that showcased a timeline of corruption in many countries, and that was done solely for the purpose for the solely for the purpose of good, for doing good to the people, to enable people to know the truth, to do journalism in its purest form. This is because global journalism allowed them to present the data in its truest form. The reason for that might not have been at first to be what to as good as it seems. The reason for that was that the data they got from that anonymous source was so immense that it was not possible for one agency or one journalist to do it on their own. So they collaborated, and they did this project in record time, and they released it simultaneously. And even then, many of them were killed, many of them were ostracized. That is because when those news stories were broken onto the mainstream media, the powers came into play. There's a need in the developing countries to use global journalism or peace journalism or any of the new forms of democratic and pure journalism to make the local news global, to give it a perspective that makes it relatable to the global audiences, and also make global news stories local to our people, so that we can give our people the same benefit that the people of developed countries have. Peace journalism and all these global journalisms have a lot of critique because it is blamed that it relies on advocacy, and it does so by and in doing so it gives up its neutrality. But the conflict sensitive journalism are biased as well, and journalism can never take out bias from journalism, because at the end of the day it is a person's or an organization's opinion or their interpretation of the data or their deductions. So this criticism, in my opinion, does not hold true. The need for global journalism or peace journalism will especially come true in events of conflict or in event of crisis. For example, right now, because the media the political agendas of the media organizations or the establishment media organization or the government media organization is so transparent that people now rely on more on influencers or on individual media personalities rather than those organizations, because they have taken so many U-turns that it's not, that their authenticity is being challenged. And while mainstream media has a long history of clinging to the establishment during these times, global journalism can be a way forward from that. The mainstream media reports incidents but does not advocate action or incite accountability. Independent media is important for a democratic society because it provides an accountability mirror. And the current state of mainstream media can give you a real picture of what's going on around the world. Everybody has their own agenda, and nobody wants to give way for the sake of good. And these are the times when global journalism or peace journalism or any new form of journalism that is practiced individually, by keeping in mind that you don't fall into the habit of being an armchair analyst, where you're just spewing out misinformation, because that would make this effort pointless. And that happens sometimes, because that is bound to happen. We are human, we make mistakes. But there is and one another factor is that for the longest time, when it came to real problems of the people of any state, the term silent majority was thrown around. But we have to understand is that through analyzing the actions of the mainstream media throughout the history and the action of international journalism throughout the history, we have to understand that there is no silent majority in the world. There's only the silenced majority, because their voices have been muffled down by the by not giving them any attention, and that's what these powers do. And that's why peace journalism and global journalism can be a way forward, because an independent media depicts the health of a state, and it's about time that we have a healthy state. That is my opinion, and that is my report. Thank you.